Utah and Baylor may appear to be heading in opposite directions, but this matchup is actually a lot more intriguing than you may think.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes and Locked On Baylor your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts as well as on YouTube. Huge shout out to all of those who do make us your first listen every day. We greatly appreciate you, everydayers. My name is JT We're still excited to be joined by the host of Locked On Baylor, Cam Stuart. We're going to talk about the upset chances the Bears have in this game, also talk about just an outlook of the Big 12. But first, Cam, I just want to talk about the different directions these teams are going in, right? You have a Utah team that is ranked 13th in the country right now, one of the biggest winners of the college football playoff rankings. They've absolutely obliterated the last two teams they've played. They've won their last two games by a combined 98-21 score. So Utah team steamrolling right now. Baylor coming off a win against UCF, but did lose the two games before that. Where's this Baylor team at right now with a Dave Aranda seat that appears as hot as it could be?
Well, look, I'll say this, JT. These two teams are going to be in a very similar spot after the last game of the season. And that is that they will have a different coach for the next game.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
That's my bold prediction, is they're both going to be in there. It has been tough sledding. It has certainly been the opposite of how Utah's gone the last couple of weeks, and this season has become underwhelming. I don't want to say last Saturday was a fluke. I mean, I guess by its very definition it is, but like Baylor played a really good game. It was the best game they played all season against a UCF team. Not good. I wouldn't say horrible. Like, I don't think they're West Virginia, winners of one in a row, or Oklahoma State, but they're obviously not that good. And Baylor crushed them. They took care of them the way you're supposed to. They gave them the old Gettysburg Address victory, won by 4 scores. It was something positive, but I'm just not sure if it's something stable enough to build off of. This is still not a good defense, even though they held a team to 3 points for the first time in a Big 12 game in 20 seasons. But yeah, it feels like a march towards the end of the season, and probably towards the end of the tenure for Dave Aranda. Because, I know we talked about this in preseason. Like, did you think as a Big 12 observer that on, November 7th, we'd be looking at this Baylor team and thinking, boy, golly, I really hope they can win one of these last 3 games and go bowling. Like, that's not what this was supposed to be. We were talking the last bye week about how this should be, a quasi play-in for the Big 12 championship. And that's not at all the case. So it's two teams that had similar odds to win the Big 12 at the start of the regular season. And one is very much in the picture still. And Baylor is just holding on to try to get to a bowl game. So I got to say, JT, I was wrong about this Utah team. I know your fans will love to hear that. I didn't think they would be bad. I think we talked about that. I didn't think they were going to be bad by any stretch, but I didn't think they'd be in the picture here in November. And they're there. They're in the picture. They're at the table, so to speak. I wouldn't call them a front runner. Obviously, there needs some things to go right on Utah's end, but they're in the picture.
It's funny how differently, because in a way you could have been right. We've lost the 2 best teams we've played. We have 2 losses, just like a Houston, who doesn't feel like they're really in the picture, even though they technically are. But the difference is just how Utah has just handled everyone else that they have played so far. And Utah has been absolutely dominant at home too, which is something that I am very intrigued by with this Baylor team, Cam. What's the difference? Home versus road, it has been a totally different story when you look at this Baylor team. How much of that is the opponents versus they've played, or is it just something else going on there? Because I know we've also talked about, the fan turnout in Waco isn't always there either. So it's not like this atmosphere that I think we would call one of the 3 best in the Big 12. So what is the home and road disparity? What's going on here with the Bears?
Yeah, first off, I do want to point out, because I did point it out on my show earlier this week, JT, since the Tech game, Utah's plus 140. Plus 140. And that includes a loss in there, obviously, but plus 140. To talk about, Houston's not a plus 140. I'm not going to look it up right now, but I can say that with pretty good certainty that they're not plus 140 in the last, whatever it is, 5-6 weeks. But in terms of Baylor, man, they've traditionally not been a great team on the road. And that's just what comes with a non-blue blood powerhouse college football program, right? Typically, you're not going undefeated on the road most years. But you look at all of Baylor's great seasons, and it comes when they've got either an overload of home games or they've got their big games at home. Like 2021, for example, maybe the greatest season Baylor's ever had. They got 12 wins. They won the Big 12. They won the Sugar Bowl. They had Oklahoma at home. They had Texas at home. They had Iowa State, a top 10 team at the time early in the season, at home. Like they just had they had BYU, a non-conference homecoming game, obviously at home. Like those were the biggest games on the schedule that year, and they were home games. And you alluded to it. They're not much better at home than they are on the road. Most of the time in the Dave Aranda era, this has obviously been pretty up and down throughout that whole time and up and down this year. There's just a complete fan apathy at these home games, man. There's not a lot of juice in the stands. And I don't love talking about it too much on my show. You know why? Because the people that watch and listen to my show every day are there and they are giving their juice. And so I don't want to feel like I'm calling them out because those aren't the people. But yeah, I mean, 45, 50,000 seat stadium. And a lot of the games this year, you've been rocking at 35, 37,000 people. Like that's an MLB Sunday afternoon crowd. That's not one of your 6 games for college football. So it has been a struggle for Baylor to come out of the gates firing. And it's been especially the case when they play at home, of course, sans this UCF game last weekend. So yeah, coming in for an opposing team coming into Waco in this Dave Aranda era, it's not that intimidating a place to come in and play, which sucks as a fan to talk about, but it's not one that you worry about going into. I think if you're a team as talented as Utah is.
And Utah's seeking a back-to-back win in that stadium as well, too. They won a couple of years ago when they went out there.
This is wild. This would be what, the third win third win in 3 years against Baylor, but looking for that first Big 12 conference victory against Baylor. Yeah, that's technically the case.
Yeah, Drake loved to point out that Utah hadn't won a Big 12 home game, which is technically true because when y'all came to us last year and we beat DeQuan Finn, it wasn't a conference home game.
It technically, I don't even think it exists, JT. I don't even think we took score in that game. I don't think that was the case. Definitely. So yeah, looking for the first one there, first Big 12 victory. I hope it's a little bit entertainment factor wise, a little bit better than the last time these two played in Waco. That did end up coming down to the wire, you'll remember, but that was an absolute rock fight. That was Sawyer Robertson's first start, by the way.
His first start, and
you could tell.
And he's grown into a tremendous passer. This Utah team, if you're listening as a Baylor fan, you're like, what has happened to Utah? You lose to BYU and you lose to Tech and you turn around. When Utah can physically overwhelm you, it's a very long Saturday evening, afternoon, whatever you play as. This is one of the best offensive lines in college football, not just the Big 12. D-line is nasty, especially when they can blitz and get after you. John Henry Daly, one of the best pass rushers in all of college football. So this Utah team hitting their stride at the right time, getting extra healthy off a bye week 2. Devin Dampier did miss a game before. But how is this Baylor team doing and off the bye? Is this a Utah and a Baylor team that is it going to give us a good matchup? Is it going to be a blowout? That's what we're going to talk about in one moment. But first, this crossover episode of Locked On Utes and Locked On Baylor is brought to you by our great friends at DoorDash. How great is DoorDash? Because especially with college football, it's the perfect combination. And it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. Like for the Utah Utes, if I was to go back a couple weeks ago, I'd probably say Ryan Davis. He had over 100 yards. If you're listening to this and you go for Baylor, you could say Sawyer Robertson for just what he's done all season. Pressure was on. Those guys have come through. Their performance wasn't a fluke. They're building on what is now a streak. And just like those players delivered for the Utes and Bears, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period ends November 18th. You can start your streak today. Cam Stuart of Locked On Baylor here. This is an interesting matchup. You have a top 5 rushing offense, Utah. Utah among the top 4 teams. The other 3 are all service schools. Then there's the Utah Utes, 267. They lead the Big 12 in rushing yards per game. This is a Baylor offense. They're top 5 in passing yards through the air offensively. Sawyer Robertson, the weapons they have at their disposal, it's been incredibly impressive. But the reason, look, Utah coming in this game, 13th ranked team, they're clearly viewed as the better team. But this is a matchup I feel like that also favors the Utes, Cam, because as good as your offense is, your rush defense is one of the worst in the Big 12, and you're facing a Utah team that just wants to bludgeon teams. So that I don't love that if I'm a Baylor fan looking at the stats in this one.
One of the worst in the Big 12, nay, the country on run defense. That is where, honestly, the matchup, that was the first matchup I looked for earlier this week, and it kind of starts and ends with that. Now, the hopium that you can have as a Baylor fan is that going into last week, all I said was Baylor does not match up with UCF. They don't match up. UCF is a good running team. It was top 5 in the Big 12, and they had a top 10 passing defense in the country. And I was like, that's just not great for Baylor. That's not matching up at all. And they held them to 74 rushing yards and held them to 3 points. And Sawyer Robertson was Sawyer Robertson. And I was like, wow, okay. So that's where you can find some hope with Baylor for Baylor fans, is that maybe you've turned some sort of corner because you did kind of have a similar rough matchup last week, but UCF was good in both those things. Utah is a little bit better in both those facets and more talented in both of those facets and more battle tested throughout the whole season than UCF has been. So yeah, it's funny. You talked about it in that last segment. Like, Utah's going to bully teams. Yeah. Right. They're going to bully ball. They've got dominant lines, both sides. You've got good pass rushing coming too. And you can lean on it and run all over teams. Please don't take this as an insult, please. But that to me sounds like Auburn, just without the Hugh Freeze, Jackson Arnold mess. Okay. Like, that to me sounds like Auburn, and Auburn crushed us. Just demolished us, man. We were kind of, sort of, a little bit in the game with 5 minutes left, but they got everything they wanted all freaking night. JT, I don't know if Devin Dampier is going to throw for 100 yards in this game. I don't know if he's going to have to. Yeah. By the way, Jackson Arnold threw for 108 in that game, and they scored 38 points. He had 137 rushing yards, and he's had 121 in the 8 games since then. So I don't know if Utah is going to, this is going to be like Army versus Notre Dame 1920. I don't think they're going to have to pull out the forward pass at all. That could work, JT. That could work. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Don't be surprised if Utah does not throw the ball 10 times against the Baylor Bears next weekend. That's my chief concern. That is my biggest concern. Is that how Utah is just going to, is Utah even going to need to take it out of second gear here?
I think if you're Utah, like, when they've gotten in 3rd and long, they get themselves in trouble. It's just run the ball whenever you can. Devin Dampier can make some throws. I mentioned in our ad that Ryan Davis has been a really good receiver, but he's one of the receiving yardage wise leaders. He's up there actually for the Big 12. I don't think he's one of the 3 best receivers in this conference, but he's a really good player. So you can move the ball a little bit through the air, but obviously the biggest thing is the passing game. It's actually a fun matchup of tight ends too. Utah's Dallin Bentley has done a really good job, and you guys do have a lot of weapons, which if we do look at the other side of the ball, I think this is the most talented thrower of the football that Utah's placed here. Morton's up there too, but I don't know. Sawyer can sling it. He might turn it over, but he can sling it. This Utah team plays man coverage almost more than anyone. So if you're Baylor and you can protect Sawyer and give him the time needed, you have the receivers who may be able to get open. This is a really good Utah cornerback group. They are sticky in coverage, but it's hard to hold up in man-to-man play after play. But the key will be, how long can you keep Sawyer upright when the wild blitzes that Morgan Scalley sends his way are going to come? How is this Baylor offensive line doing? Because I think they're the key to Baylor keeping pace with the Utah strong rushing attack.
Yeah, that's honestly where it's going to come down to. Like, if Sawyer has time, he's going to keep you in the game. Okay, I'm not going to say that he's going to put up 42 points on Utah, but he's going to keep you in the game if he's got time. And I think you kind of allude to it there. Like, it's the best passer they've faced all season and probably the best arsenal of weapons that Utah's faced all season. Tech is also pretty good. But you talk about Josh Cameron on the outside, Michael Trigg, the tight end. It could be a first round pick in next year's draft. Some people are grading him that way. He's an absolute freak, one of the best tight ends in the country. And that's not even talking about their leading touchdown guy, Kobe Prentice, who just runs posts and scores touchdowns every time he touches the ball. Like, certainly Sawyer can spread the bacon, man. He could share the love the Brooklyn way with this Baylor offense. And that is one thing that Baylor fans can kind of hope for. Like, if this does get to a shootout, that favors Baylor. That's I don't know. Utah doesn't get in a lot of shootouts, and the way they run the ball, it's going to take a big effort from Baylor's defense for it to get into a shootout and to play into their hands. But yeah, that is where Baylor can get after you. Sawyer Robertson himself can keep you in the game, and the arsenal of weapons he has can keep you in the game. Now, this Utah defense, pretty good. JT, pretty good. Would you look at that assessment and say, yeah, this is probably the best overall offense that you've played?
I would say so. I mean, as good as a Tech's offense is, I think Baylor has, so I said, Sawyer, I think he's a little better than Morton. I think that, running backs for Tech, I don't know. I love who you guys have. I think he's a baller too. Your pass catchers top to bottom, though, I think our deep, we have 4 guys with over 400 yards receiving. Cam, do you know how many Utah has? One. It's just Ryan Davis. Like, and Dallin Bentley, I said he's a good tight end, but like he ain't no Trigg either. Like this is different teams in that way too. So I would agree. I think top to bottom, this is a deeper Baylor pass catching unit than we've seen from some of these other teams too, Cam. And I'm curious to see how Utah defends that.
And to be fair, like, to flip it on the other side real quick, like, this is the best defense that Baylor's played comfortably. The only one in the top 10 scoring defense-wise. No BYU on the schedule, no Tech on the schedule. Did face Auburn, which is top 20 and pretty legit. But this is definitely the best defense that Baylor has played. Sorry, what was your question? I was so locked in on telling you that.
No, you were good. Actually, I was going to shift to another area of this game that I find very interesting, sir. And that is
so ready to pump Utah's tires, man. Maybe too ready for that.
And like I said, I really do believe this is the best collection top to bottom of receiver, running back, tight end, of playmakers. But I also said the same thing about Cincinnati going into last week, and Utah obviously handled them very well. Utah hasn't been able to do this yet on the road, though. They dominated West Virginia, but West Virginia is just bad. Like, let's just call it what it is. I do not think Baylor's a bad football team, even if they're not contending for a Big 12 title right now, in my opinion. One underrated area of this game, Cam. Special teams. Utah special teams have been improving steadily over each week. They had a big punt return touchdown last week. I still remember Baylor giving up the kickoff touchdown week 1 to Auburn. How is Baylor's special teams unit? Because as weird as it is to talk about that being a key, sometimes when team season are going south, you can see special teams mistakes made. So how is Baylor doing on the third and least talked about side of the ball?
Okay, is where I'll go with that. Okay. Not as good as last year when you had genuinely one of the best punt returners in the country, and Josh Cameron. Mm-hmm. He's back. He's still there. They don't force a lot of punts. So that's part of it. He's had a couple of big returns get called back by penalties. There's teams strategizing against him. So basically all that to say, Josh Cameron has not had the space that he had last year, but they've got a kicker who's damn near automatic outside of 40 yards. Beyond 40 yards. Of course, I say that he did miss one last week, but hit a couple. And so that has been an extra threat. But just like the Josh Cameron thing, this Baylor team doesn't do enough of it. They go for it on 4th down more than anybody in the country. So how does it matter that you have a great field goal kicker if you're not putting him out there when you're just going for it on 4th down? I think Dave has gotten a little more conservative in the last couple of weeks with that. He is kicking more field goals. He's taking the points more, even though they haven't been ahead in all of those games, even when it's been a little uncomfortable to do so. So, okay, special teams wise, they punt the ball well. But it's, again, a thing they don't do a lot. They don't field a lot of punts because they don't get a lot of punts coming their way. So what if that is the great equalizer in this game?
Yeah.
Like top 10 offense, top 10 defense, and it's just going to be field position. Who's going to win on special teams? That would be fascinating.
It's always those little things that end up making the difference. And like I said, this is just a fascinating matchup when you talk about how good Baylor's offense is through the air, Utah's offense through the ground. The Utah defense being physical, and obviously Baylor's defense still trying to figure things out, but off a strong performance against UCF. It's going to be really interesting to see how these two teams match up when they do finally meet up next Saturday. But in the meantime, it was a huge week for the Big 12. We got to recap it and talk about the massive showdown coming up in Lubbock and the implications it has for both of our teams in one moment. But first, this episode of Locked On Utes and Locked On Baylor is brought to you by our friends at Supply House. Supply House has your back. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, you can get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting on projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Supply House has next day delivery. Talk about a game changer. Also, the part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where the details matter. You can join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lowest prices, and dedicated support lines. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use the promo code SHCollege5. That's number 5, not spelled out. So SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service with Supply House. Cam, I've talked a lot on my show this week about what a big week it was for the Big 12, having 3 teams in the top 15 of the college football rankings. I feel like Cincinnati barely missed the cut line, and they can get back in a moment's notice. I don't know if Baylor is gonna be getting in there anytime soon, but
you have some hope. Have some belief in the Big 12.
Finish the year strong, yeah. But just what do you think about the week that was for the conference? I feel like this is as big of a win for the conference as they've had in some time.
It is. It's huge. It's huge. What I will say, though, is I don't love what it's going to mean to a lot of the country, because I think our pal Drake had a good meme about this week. But like, when 2 top 15 teams face off in the SEC and one of them wins by even 10 points, the other one doesn't get affected. Like, you know what I mean? If Tennessee loses to Alabama tomorrow, which they've already done, like that doesn't affect them. You know what I mean? They're still kind of in the picture. With the Big 12, it then becomes, oh, well, Cincinnati's not for real. Cincinnati's not a good football team. You know, Utah just kicked the crap out of them. And we could see it this weekend for what is the titanic matchup of the Big 12 in the conference schedule. Like, if either BYU or Tech wins by 12 points, do you think the other one's going to be like, oh, well, that's still a good team? Like, no, that's not going to be the national narrative, which it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be the national narrative. It should not be that. So that's the thing that I get bummed out about, or at least a little anxious about, right? With all these teams inside the top 15, like, there could, and we could be saying in a month that there should be 3 Big 12 teams in the college football playoff. I just don't know if the rest of the committee or the rest of the country and ESPN and the powers that be are going to think that way. You know, like, let's play it out. Let's play it out with from the Utah fans' perspective here, that BYU is the one that loses on Saturday. They lose 30-21. It's a good game, but Tech just kind of keeps them at arm's length the whole time, and they come away with the big 30-21 victory. They get a little safety at the end. How about that? What is the narrative around BYU then the next week of like, oh, they haven't played anybody, Big 12 schedule. You know, they won't look and see that they beat a good Utah team by 3 points. They won't see that. You know, Utah's not beating anybody this weekend, so they're not going to freaking see that. So like, I'm curious as to your thoughts on that. Like, do you think that even though there are 3 teams in the top 15 that are legitimately vying for playoff spots right now, that the Big 12 will still get the respect it probably deserves?
I think they will. I'll push back on some of what you said. I think it's
Let's go.
I think it's a very nuanced thing, because Cincinnati unfortunately did get embarrassed. They did not look like they belonged with Utah. So as much as I would have kept them in at like 24, 25 in my personal rankings, I can understand why you put more value on a Tennessee team and rank them above them when, yes.
By the way, Pitt, I didn't even notice Pitt 24.
I know.
7-2. One of those 2 losses to the West Virginia Mountaineers. Come on, man. Turn me up, man. ACC sucks. Sorry.
The ACC is bad, but I will give Pitt some credit. They have started to kind of build on some momentum, figure it out. And we can both agree with this. Weird things happen in rivalry games is the only thing I will say about that loss.
This is the ACC country in you. This is, you just can't help it. You got to defend the ACC. I know where you are
I
close
do,
to the
I do,
headquarters. Yeah.
I do think though we are in an interesting point though with what's going on in the ACC because it feels like there's only likely getting one in. But going back to even the Tennessee thing I talked about, Cam, Cincinnati, the reason they suffered is because they got blown out. I'm just trying to remember the SEC team that's highly ranked where it was like, oh my gosh, they got embarrassed in this game. They got blown out to that degree, right? And yes, maybe in Oklahoma that happened against Texas, but Mateer's injury, I feel like that they forced him to come back early. He did not look right at all. So now he started to build on his strength and look better. I feel like the Big 12's worst nightmare this week is BYU goes in and they get embarrassed because if BYU gets embarrassed, guess what they're going to do? They're actually going to drop below Utah. Not a lot of people are talking about that. They'd be like, what do you mean? They have the head-to-head. Yeah, the committee's placing a lot of value in the head-to-head against Miami and Notre Dame played earlier. Notre Dame above despite the loss because who looks better right now? Notre Dame by a landslide at this moment. So if BYU does get embarrassed, they will fall. And the Cougars in the Big 12 will have no one to blame but themselves. This needs to be a close game. If it's like you mentioned, even 31-20, I still think you're hanging around. You're right there. People will go, hey, that's a good BYU team because you still do look back and you see that Utah game. But I think it's fair. There are going to be people who quickly try and dismiss the Big 12 teams. The problem is there's a lot of these SEC teams that are starting to get some warts pop up. Even I like Ole Miss, but that barely squeaked past a Washington State. And I can still remember that memory very fondly. So I'm curious to see how this game plays out this week. And by the way, I do think Tech is going to win and cover this weekend.
And to your point on that, like if Tech does that, let's say they win by 10 or 12, then people are looking at it and saying, okay, well, Tech blew out the other top two or the two top teams next to them in the Big 12, right? BYU and Utah. And so they're going to say that and say, well, then maybe it's just Tech that needs to be here. That's the other kind of ammo they can use of like, well, the other two weren't even close, weren't even within a touchdown of Texas Tech. They're just head and shoulders. The other thing I don't love for the Big 12 is like Notre Dame's there. And the committee's not picking against Notre Dame.
They love Notre Dame.
If Notre Dame is close, Notre Dame is in.
But they're giving Notre Dame way too much credit because Notre Dame has not. Yes, that's a good USC win. I will give them that. It was also at home. Like they lost to the two best teams they did play overall on their schedule. I agree that Notre Dame is getting too much love. You could argue at Utah. Utah lost to two best teams they played too. You can argue that maybe an A&M's the best one of the bunch, but still, I do feel like that Notre Dame, they're just like saying like, oh, Notre Dame's good. They haven't beaten anyone.
Yeah, and like Texas, is Texas's best win better than Utah's best win? I don't know. I mean, the expert will say yes because OU's there. But like, I don't know how much better OU is than Cincinnati. To be totally honest with you, Vandy, I like Vandy too, but like, I don't know. They're 7-2. I think they've got one pretty good victory in there. And the other thing too, like around these teams that are sniffing around that top 12. UVA, I don't think UVA is a top 12 team.
The committee doesn't think UVA is good.
But they're not going to lose the rest of the season. They're playing Wake, Duke. Duke's a decent team. And Virginia Tech. They're not going to lose those games. I know, rivalry, but it's going to be in Charlottesville. Like UVA is going to win all those games. Louisville, I think, is going to win all their games remaining. Georgia Tech is going to be right in that conversation again. They'll lose to Georgia, so that'll help the Big 12, so to speak. But there's these teams around there that I just think the committee prefers. Before we get out, if Utah wins out and they don't get in the Big 12 championship game, do you still think they have a lifeline?
Utah's best, as much as it pains me to say it, Utah's best path to the college football playoff is to go undefeated and hammer everyone they play. But BYU and Tech, after this weekend, you need Tech to win. And then they don't lose another game. Because if Utah gets into the Big 12 championship, they have to win that game. You're not putting a 3-loss Big 12 team, even if that loss comes in that game, into the playoff. So Utah's actually best path in probably is to go undefeated and let BYU and Tech slug it out. And then you're not dropping a 1-loss team who gets their second loss in there. It's the SMU from last year. It's crazy. Utah's best path, Cam, actually isn't to make it, I think. Isn't that wild?
It is weird. And you know what I was thinking of when you were saying that too? Like how much this college football playoff has warped our minds as sports fans. That's a 3-loss Utah team. Or you could see it as a 10-win Utah team. But that is how they see it. Like that is how they see it. And sometimes it's fair, sometimes it's not. But if the way it's going right now, the Big 12 should absolutely have 2 teams in. Like if Utah loses again and BYU loses twice after a Tech game, then of course, no qualms, no arguments there. But I just don't think that's going to happen. And I think the Big 12 should have at least 2 teams in here. And if Utah sneaks in and gets a third, expect a fruit basket from Brett Yormark, man.
Yeah.
Which I didn't expect coming to the Utah Utes way anytime soon from the Big 12 offices. But that would be Brett Yormark gambling on his own conference and winning in year 1.
We've come a long way from Mr. Harlan up at Utah
Long
State.
way.
We don't want to be here. We're in a better spot now. We're
It hasn't
trying
even
to
been a
move
year
past
yet.
it. That's been a year. Yeah,
will
we're trying to move past it. Also, really quick, I'll say 2 things. Number 1, I actually do think Virginia stumbles. They barely beat that North Carolina team. So I feel more losses are coming to the ACC we don't expect. Also, not surprised at all you try to defend Cincinnati a little bit there. Talk about how good of a team Cincinnati was.
Look,
because
they look
that
so
is
good against Baylor, man.
Yeah, that's because they did look
So
very
good.
good against Baylor. Now we'll get to see how Utah looks again, gets to see how they look against Baylor in about a week, though. Make sure you guys subscribe and follow both of our shows, Locked On Baylor, Locked On Utes. We'll be coming at you next week, getting you revved and ready for this game. Cam, appreciate you joining me.
Hey, anytime. Sick 'em Bears.
That's going to do it for our show. We'll see you next week. Have a great weekend, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the bye.